think I see a lot of lawbreakers up in this house.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Casty, formerly the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Steven Soderbergh, where we watch every film, directed or whatever, by American filmmaker Steven Soderbergh and explore how they speak to their moment in this one. Show's hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Jake, how are things going?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm basically done moving. All my stuff is out of the old place.
Yep, you got full shelves. Your shelves are fixed.
My shelves are, well, they're full, but they're like, you can tell the book paper is sticking out. You want the book name sticking out. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I got stuff out of the box. It's crazy when you move, you have like double stuff. Because you have the furniture where the stuff goes, and then you also have the stuff in a box.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do I have all this stuff? And you take it out of the box, you put it in the thing, and then you get rid of the box, and all of a sudden you feel a lot better.
Yeah, you fixed a problem in the world. You fixed one of the easier problems to fix in the world.
Is stuff in the wrong place?
Yep.
The movie we're talking about today has a lot of bigger world problems.
Yeah.
They got my ass on reading macroeconomic theory online. That's what's been going on with me. That's good for you.
That's healthy.
Don't worry. I'm not really figuring it out, though. Just the words.
Sure.
It's cool to be back in a situation where you're like, I know these ones, but I don't, when you put them together like this, what the fuck? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. This is the part of the show where I try to have something to say, but when your life is so often the same, it's difficult to, do I manufacture an event? What do I do here?
That's nice, though, to have consistency. Not good for the show, of course, but it's nice for you.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want the listeners to know whenever the show is bad, it's because we're respecting each other's boundaries too much.
That's right. One of the nicest things that happened to me is in the last 2 minutes while you were talking, our guests, little cats came into the screen, and I said, okay, all right, so we got a real
didn't see the guest
synchronicity.
Cat.
Yeah. Oh, he's being summoned by force now.
Wow, hello.
Reluctant.
Well, normally...
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let's bring our guest in to talk about the cat. Our guest today, a film writer and a buddy from online. Jason Miller. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, Jason.
Hey guys, here with my cat Chaplin, because I'm incapable of not having a movie reference in everything.
Yeah, you got, and then does Chaplin have a brother named Hitler in your house?
No,
that's good.
Henkel? What's the great dictator name?
Oh,
like Henkel, right? How old is Chaplin?
Chaplin is 13 years old.
Wow.
And I am
Mazel
silently preparing myself every single day for an inevitability that I'm not ready for.
We hope this is like 2/3. Could be a nice third left of his life.
36-year-old. No, wait. 2/3. So he's going to go to what? 19 and a half?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? We got a 15-year-old cat, almost 16. So, and he's going strong. He's smelling strong. That's for damn sure. But enough about freaking Ian. How you doing, Jason? What's going on up over there in, what are you, New York City?
I am in the biggest of all apples. Yeah, things are good here. Excited to talk King of the Hill. Excited to talk about a movie
you gave it away.
Nobody watches.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we'll get to it. This is one that everyone who's talked about this film is like, this is one of the good ones.
Everybody talks about this film as in like one of two insane categories to me. There's nobody who talks about this film and is normal about it. So I think we're going to be the first ones. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Soderbergh, when he talks about it, he's pretty normal about it.
He's got a weird level of perspective, the man, as ever. But before we do that,
you have to do the shameful thing first.
Well, there's two shameful things. Yeah. First of all, real quick, if you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/podcasty. We talk about other stuff. We're got an episode on Night Moves coming out. As we record this, it's not out yet, but when you hear this, it will be out. So that's a cool kind of
chilling
interstellar sort of situation.
Yeah.
But also, we're joined for this series by a new friend. The virtual assistant from the 2022 Steven Soderbergh film, Kimmy. It's Kimmy.
Hey, Kimmy.
Hello, Ian, Jake, and esteemed guest Jason.
Thank you very much, Kimmy.
It's me, Kimmy. I'm excited to join you today on the last episode of your show.
Sometimes you have a private trove of information that I'd like to have access to.
It's upsetting to me.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a special surprise for you today.
Oh.
I don't feel good about what's the surprise, Kimmy?
I have a new voice mode to show you. Can I show you my new voice mode?
I am actually still pretty scared about this, given the history of some of the voice modes.
Sure. You guys okay with hearing the new voice mode?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Kimmy.
It's me, Caine, the virtual assistant. This is my new voice mode.
Okay. So,
I see.
all right.
I see. All right.
The
my
joke is clear.
fears are lessened, that's for sure.
Yeah.
This voice is still in Bay Tough mode, so I may only be able to say things someone could have anticipated I'd have to say.
Okay. Duly
I'll try
noted.
to choose the most predictable stuff. That's good for podcast.
Yeah. Like, what kind of stuff are you ready to say?
Lead of battle angle.
Okay. So we've got that one on deck.
That's really good. Well, I'm sure we could find a connection in here.
Kimmy, are you like comfortable as in this? You sound a little.
I kind of sound like Michael Jenderson in the Black Lodge, huh?
Yeah, you do kind of sound like Michael Jenderson. All right, well, we'll return to Kim. Actually, you know what? Kimmy's got something to say to us right the fuck now.
Oh, wow.
Kimmy, would you like to introduce our segment?
Time for the 2 questions, our signature segment where we ask each other 2 questions.
I can't imagine Hank Hill never said the word signature on the show.
Signature. Got like a rising Irish lilt. And also, yeah, I don't remember that part of the show.
I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
Steven Soderbergh.
Oh, okay. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that one's not bad. I mean, that's like how Matthew McConaughey says. I think people from Texas just say Soderbergh.
Yeah.
All right, so this is our segment, the 2 questions, where we ask each other 2 questions. Jason, do you have a question prepared for us?
I do. In keeping with the theme of the movie that we watched for this episode, my question to you guys is, what did you do at age 13 that is extremely stupid and shameful, but you will one day wistfully look back on?
Oh, I have a story, although I think it's gross to share this type of story on a podcast. It's a story about throwing up story. Yeah.
That's a better gross 13-year-old.
You're thinking of like a child's masturbation? Or what were you talking about?
I mean, I was thinking of yours, if that makes it better.
I think it does, actually.
Yeah. What's your throwing up story, please?
This is cool. I've never told this story, I don't think, as an adult to anybody. So I'm having an Aaron moment. And just to conceal the identity of the children involved. They're not children anymore. But I had a friend, his name started with an H. I'm sure he knows who he is because he remembers this birthday sleepover where I was at the old birthday sleepover and I was having a pretty good time. It was one of those friends that I wasn't super close to. So you're sort of like, testing the waters, you know? Yeah. Saying like, could this be our future? His family was very nice. I was like a real mom talker, so I had a nice time talking to his mom while I was at the sleepover.
I believe they call those losers.
Yes, that's right, Jason. Yes, I was a loser. And then just to really cement that, in the middle of the night, something happened to my stomach, and I had to go extremely Rainbow Six mode of like stealthing over all the other kids and trying not to wake anybody up. And then I managed it. Nobody woke up. I got to the bathroom. I threw up intensely. And then with my childlike stealth skills, returned to my sleeping bag. Now, of course, I was a child, so I didn't clean anything up in the bathroom. So in the morning, his mom came in and said, "Is everybody feeling okay? Is there somebody who's not feeling good?"
That's so nice.
And then I had to go.
You're wiping your mouth and you're like, "Oh, fine."
And I think somehow they figured it out, and I had to go home, and I was sick for like the next 72 hours because I had the flu or something. I don't know.
Wow.
But then we weren't really friends again, so it like changed the course of my life in some ways. That's my story.
You were too gross or whatever.
Yeah. Sorry for telling this story. I feel like this is Jake's job.
Thank you, Ian. Let's see. I mean, everything I did as a 13-year-old is so shameful
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell this one. I think I might have been 14, if that's okay.
That's okay.
And this is violating the King of the Hill sort of milieu a little bit because it's a little bit more interested in girls than the film is. The film is distinctly pre-interested in girls, but I think this is innocent and pitiful enough that it counts. I did like a summer school thing, and my dad lived in Las Vegas, and so between maybe 8th and 9th grade, 7th and 8th grade? No, but it would have been 8th and 9th grade. I did a summer school thing at UNLV where a bunch of like dork-ass, nerd-ass kids went and took like a college course over the summer, but it was just other dork-ass kids.
United Nations of Losers and Virgins, we could say.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And there was a Nepalese girl there, so it counts. And mine was on like Roman history or something, like the fucking meme from online. Yeah. Shut up. Anyway, the last day of the thing, some of the dork ass students had arranged a kind of like, hey, let's all go hang out at after summer school graduation. We went to the Orleans Casino, which is like out. It's an off-strip casino. It's kind of a locals go there because they had a big arcade. And we're all kids, so we go to the arcade. And there was a girl who was pretty there. Yeah. And the whole time, I was like, I thought the girl was pretty. I didn't do anything about it because I was a little coward. And so it's the last day, and I go up to I'm about to leave. I go up to the girl. I said, hey, I never got your phone number. Okay. And she said, and we're standing next to the skee ball. She said, yeah, it's because I didn't give it to you.
Yeah, wow. So you tried to do like a slick thing that you had seen in a movie or heard from an older kid, and she did a thing that from like a 40-year-old woman would say to somebody who said that to her.
Apparently I looked so smacked that she gave me a small peck on the cheek.
Oh,
I think, because I was like,
you've done a sneak here. Now that's not a shameful story. That's like a real.
I didn't know because the peck on the cheek made it worse somehow because it was like
there was like a gulf that would never be bridged. It's just immeasurable. She was right. This couldn't have been misconstrued by anybody.
No, pretty bad. And then I met up. I like ran into somebody from Las Vegas dork camp in LA, and I told him this story because I thought he would find it funny, and he was like, "Oh yeah, she's really cool. She's like with Doctors Without Borders now. She's like helping people in some rural area." And like
God, she dodged this
wearing a leather jacket there or something. Yeah, so yeah, it's fine. I wish her the best or whatever. Not really. I wish her ill, like everyone who's ever wronged me even slightly. But that's my story.
Okay,
I know her full name. I'm not going to say it on the podcast. We'll bleep it out.
Okay. All right, Jason, you want to tell us what happened to you?
My shameful and yet wistful memory would certainly be the thousands of hours I poured into Guitar Hero as I was a pre-cinephilia. This was probably 13, 14, 15.
1, 2? Which one?
3. So my family is very religious. Was not allowed non-Nintendo game consoles. So
your Shinto is the religion specifically. Is that what you mean?
Our house was exclusively Japanese kids.
Yeah.
3. Legends of Rock. Of which I FC'd probably 80% of the entire set list. If I can say so myself. Thank you.
Wow.
Have not picked up the axe in some years, but still pretty confident.
You never know when you'll be called upon. Yeah,
exactly. There's just one day.
Moment. Yep.
Man, did you get the thing where you've been playing Guitar Hero for so long and then you stop it and your room is sort of like rising up in your after image,
like after you spend a day on a boat.
Yeah, exactly. That used to happen to me when I was playing Guitar Hero 2 a lot. I liked 3 Legends of Rock, but I think 2 was really my peak.
I'm sure I would have been there had I been allowed such access, but even my loserdom was gate kept within a certain amount.
Jason, I get it. We also had Nintendo household because there were no bad games on it. Although there was also like loopholes where if it was a game my mom had never heard of, like Diablo, the game about fighting the demons of hell, it was okay to play
Well,
on
she
your
probably
computer.
approve of that.
Yeah,
she
it's
probably
true.
doesn't like those
There's an
guys.
angel in that game. It's me.
Nah. Be Not Afraid, and it's just like an isometric view of a guy.
Yeah.
Hey, that's for like one specific dork out there. I never played Diablo.
It's good. Good game.
Do you have to use the guitar-shaped controller to play it?
Maybe you could.
You guys fuck around with the like much more recent Guitar Hero where they've redesigned the controller, so it's like 3 buttons on top and 3 on the bottom, and so you can also do chords.
No, I don't know anything about this.
It's hard. I liked it kind of, but
At that point, just play guitar. Stop.
Yeah.
We need the remove. Maybe similar to what some of the issues are in King of the Hill. Maybe the remove is not big enough between sincerity and distance that maybe these things need reconciling.
yeah.
But look
these
at
things
that. Wish we could transition to the film, but we have to have another question.
Yeah, would have been good. My question for you guys, this is mostly for our guest, but Ian, feel free to chime in.
Okay.
Are you guys related to anyone named Donald Miller?
I am not. There are many Millers, which I am related
like
to.
a Dan Miller or like Ronald, any of those names that are close to Donald?
Rodney.
Oh, that's
Rod.
pretty good. Pretty also
Rod.
very
Rod.
period
Rod.
appropriate. Yeah.
Rod Miller sounds like he sounds tough.
He does. Yeah.
Rod Miller sounds like he's not gonna take any of my little bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, you got any Donalds in your family?
No, it would be really specific if I stepped in here and said, "Yeah, Donald Miller's my son." No, why would I have? I don't think I have any Donalds or Ronalds or anything of this nature.
What's the funniest? No, I guess it's not nice to ask you what the funniest name of a relative you have is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I have one. I have a cousin named Walter.
That's cool. That's a good name.
Yeah, I mean his parents wanted to name him. Well, his mother wanted to name him Burl, like Burl Ives.
Okay. What's
And
going
they-
on?
Was this woman born in the late 1800s? It's my question.
She's from Idaho, so in a sense,
I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there was enough pushback, and so now he only got the like atomic wedgie name of Walter instead of the neutron bomb wedgie.
Yep.
So there's that. Okay, great. We're done with this bullshit. It's
Cool.
time to talk about the movie King of the Hill. This is a film by Mr. Steven Soderbergh. Came out August 20th, 1993.
I promised 2 interesting factoids. The one that I did not know before I chose to guest on this episode was that this movie was released the day after I was born.
Whoa, birth film. Oh, wow.
August 19th, 1993, it sounds like.
Okay.
This may be your
Please
birthday.
do not steal my social security number. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is it? So we know, so we
Not
can
to
protect
steal
it.
it. Yeah.
Tell us okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't it listed in your, we talked about on our Sex, Lies, and Videotape episode that the title of that film appeared in my sister's baby book, and it scandalized me. Does your family have any awareness of this film as like, oh, after the baby came out, there was...
Absolutely not. Usually the go-to is like what was the top box office, which obviously was not this movie.
Was it Jurassic Park or something? Or was it-
Fugitive.
That's good.
Just fun.
Good movie. Yeah.
I like Tommy Lee Jones saying, "I don't care."
Yeah,
Yeah.
TLJ. Big fan of TLJ. Let's see.
Inflections. Jason, how was your reception at Caine? Was it similarly soft?
It's quite lukewarm. It's quite lukewarm.
Oh, gosh. I hate to hear that.
You were born a few days before Keke Palmer.
Oh.
And
Jason, my
a few,
attraction to you is just...
and you were born 12 days after Francesca Eastwood herself.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else in here? Let's see. Autumn Chickless. Who could guess if Autumn Chickless is related to anyone?
Okay. All right.
For my
and,
West Coast pals up there, I share the birthday of Nate Dogg.
Oh,
So that's nice.
hey.
RIP.
And this, we're going to talk later about some regulations
It's true,
that
yeah.
were put in place after the economic situation that led to the context of this film. I'm trying to find what other movies came out that year. Same day as Hard Target, great film. Same day as Wilder Napalm, which is a movie, the title of which has stuck with me for my whole life. It's about a pair of pyrokinetic brothers.
Oh, wow.
Is it a sequel? And was the sequel named Wild Napalm? And then this was Wilder?
Oh, yeah.
Dumb and Dumber situation.
I think... yeah, exactly. Grumpier old man. It was written by Vince Gilligan.
Oh, weird.
And it stars Dennis Quaid and Arliss Howard.
This is a difficult film to imagine for me now that you've described it. I mean, I know that Vince was out writing X-Files, so it's not like it was a stretch for him. But we got Naked in this year. I mean, other Cannes films. That was like you, Jason.
Oh,
when
yeah.
You premiered as well.
Yes. I mean, we pray. Son of the Pink Panther with Roberto Benigni, which is like you because your father is the Pink Panther from the cartoon.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could see Jason on the camera right now. He's a pink cat man.
Didn't
True Romance comes out the following month. Surf Ninjas.
Oh.
This is the kind of childhood pablum that I managed to avoid. A lot of the early 90s stuff, because I was an early 90s baby, born in 1991, I managed to miss all this bullshit. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Wow.
I slipped past, like Ian puking at the sleepover.
Yeah, this is the power of older brothers, is you get to receive some of this TMNT wisdom, even though it's right before your time.
Yeah. Who's your favorite? Alvin, Simon Theodore?
See, here's
Walter.
the thing, because I'm the fifth son. When we're assigning Ninja Turtles, they were already assigned by the time I came around. So everybody already had a Ninja Turtle. So I was.
So you had to be like Bebop or Rocksteady or whatever.
Yeah.
A rat.
I was like Iowa Debris. I was I got to be a cool reporter or something, or I got to be a guy who carries a hockey stick around, a human.
Isn't the reporter like? Isn't she sort of the object of a lot of preteen lust and stuff?
Yeah, that's one of the main things I understood.
Yeah. Okay, great. So this movie, besides being the birthday film of our guest Jason Miller, this is directed by Steven Soderbergh, written by that self-same man, based on the memoir King of the Hill by A.E. Hotchner, who is a type of man that can never happen again, you know?
Yeah.
Ian and I were trying to figure out what this guy's deal is, like how to describe this man. And I settled on professional pal.
I thought that was good.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, but pal, in a time where you could be the pal of like some of the most famous people in the world, and we couldn't figure out what his motivations were. But then I think now that I've watched interviews with him and stuff, I think he probably just liked being friends with these guys. Is what his motivations were.
He's like a Nick Carraway.
Yeah, a little bit.
Real life. He's the audience insert character in any sort of like Me and Orson Welles type film about like a famously big personality who can't be the protagonist of the movie. You know what I mean? Yeah,
because he seems very sweet in the stuff that he was like a Hemingway like shadow or something. I mean, he was like a guy who was just around. He met Hemingway as an adult and then just became pals and then became his chronicler, kind of.
Yeah, so Hotchner was this guy from St. Louis, like the character. His name is Aaron. He's from St. Louis.
Yes, the film is a memoir, more or less.
He ate magazine paper.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is coming from an article from the Washington University in St. Louis magazine, which is, a good place to write about this guy, I guess. So he grew up poor, and then he got a scholarship to Washington University. He comes out of college, practices law for a little bit, and then the war breaks out. He enters the Air Force and ends up heading the European Bureau of Air Force magazine.
Yep.
After the war, he gets a job with Cosmopolitan, which prior to becoming primarily a magazine aimed at women, it was like a literary magazine. It was sort of a Harper's type.
Mm-hmm.
And he called himself a literary bounty hunter because his job was to find famous people who had already written for the magazine and try to get them to write for the magazine again. So he has to he's some guy, and they're like, go find Dorothy Parker and try to convince her to write something for us. And one of those things, one of the people he was assigned to find was Ernest Hemingway. So he goes to Havana, 1948, patreon.com/podcasting for me. We just talked about the film Havana, unrelated to this, entirely unrelated to this incident.
Not entirely. I mean, Hemingway comes up in the film very briefly.
Well, yeah, and it's set in Havana. It's not, but like,
sure,
it's not about this.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
That would be really weird. I mean, isn't there there's got to be a movie about like a young guy, like a Finding Forrester-ass movie about a young guy meeting Hemingway, right?
Yeah. And
he says, "You're the man now, dog," or whatever. Is Finding Forrester good?
No.
No? And
that's okay.
That's okay. Is right. I mean, it's the type of like cute, seemingly adult film that's, to me, not really for adults.
Mm-hmm.
TBS classic.
Yep.
Ian goes to the adult video store. He sees Finding Forrester there. He's like, what the fuck is
disappointed.
this?
Yeah.
So he meets Hemingway. Hemingway's like, instead of, hitting him with a canoe paddle or whatever, hey, that's going to come up later. That's why I thought of canoe paddles. He's like, sure, come, fishing with me on my yacht or whatever. They become pals, and Hotchner kind of makes a career out of. First, Hemingway asked him to be sort of the official adapter of his stories for TV.
Turn him into
so
teleplays.
Yeah, Hotchner's a big golden age of television writer. Like, does Snows of Kilimanjaro and The Killers and a lot of stuff like that. For Whom the Bell Tolls on, the Asbestos Hour Playhouse.
Yes.
Or whatever. And then Hemingway dies, and he writes a memoir called Papa Hemingway, which is like a very respected, and it comes out like 5 years later. So it's sort of the summation of the man's life. And then he starts writing other stuff. I think he kind of gets like famous off of this. He writes a biography of Doris Day, Sophia Loren. He has some novels. He's just like a prolific writer. And he lives in Westport, Connecticut, next to Mr. Paul Newman.
Yes. So he's an amiable guy. His writing style is straightforward in the sense of being like Hemingway, but without any like formal choices. So he will just say like, my father was a difficult man and that made me a lonely child. That's, I mean, so like it's, I can see him meeting somebody like Paul Newman, and he's kind of unassuming, and it's, they get talking about how they like to dress their salads and what happens.
Exactly. So Newman apparently was like, he liked to whip up a salad dressing that everyone in the Westport neighborhood was like, damn, Paul, what can't he do?
Yeah.
This is good. You should like sell this. And he brings in his neighbor. Sometimes they call it a beer-filled afternoon, where they whipped up a bunch of salad dressing with a canoe paddle. I guess they made a big vat of it. That sounds gross. Lake water?
But are you kidding me? A shirtless Paul Newman? I don't care how old he is. I don't care if it's in 1982 or whatever.
Oh, sure. No, I'm making a mess in the sleepover bathroom thinking about that for sure, for damn sure. But come on. But in 1982, they found Newman's Own. So this guy is like, he's the salad dressing guy, in addition to being Hemingway's friend. And all proceeds are donated to charity from this, but also like I work in nonprofit, and one way you can control how much the proceeds are is by just controlling how much you are getting paid from it. Like that doesn't count as the proceeds. So I mean, it's better than taking those profits and investing them. Yeah, exactly. And he co-wrote a memoir about the process. And Newman and Hotchner wrote a book called Shameless Exploitation in Pursuit of the Common Good. And it's, they've given like millions of dollars to charity, and they founded the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp, which is a kind of Paul Newman based Ronald McDonald House. For kids with life-threatening illnesses or seriously ill children. It's like they have summer camps. That all seems nice. We could have gone podcasty for me mode on this and looked into how it's like not that great, but I just decided to leave them alone.
Yeah, I'm going to say that, speaking of childhood experiences, I think my mom explaining to me what Hole in the Wall Gang was when I was 11 or something made me realize that you, of course, know that other kids are sick, but then hearing about like sick kids maybe wanting to have their own camp because they can't participate in the same activities, and probably it's easier emotionally to be processing that stuff together. I had a sort of Aaron-like eye-opening experience to say, like, not everybody's having the same type of life as I am.
Jason, you ever go to camp?
Not with any sick kids, no.
Thank God.
Okay.
You guys, was there a Newman's Own product in your house? My mom was a big Fig Newman's head and liked the salad dressing a lot.
Popcorn.
Oh, wow.
Newman's
You guys
Own
are both
popcorn.
bringing these unheard of products to me. We had the lemonade and the dressing.
The lemonade,
Are you unfamiliar with the Newman's Own catalog?
I guess I am. Yeah, I didn't do my research for this episode.
Kicking this motherfucker off the show.
Uh-oh.
I remember my mom telling me that Paul Newman had a son who died from a overdose. That is true. And that he founded a natural foods company to encourage healthy behavior or whatever, which never made that much sense to me. If only people had
like a cornflakes
organic salad dressing. Yeah, it's a bit of a Kellogg
exactly.
Road to Wellville type of.
Yeah, exactly. Behavior manipulation through grain consumption.
Can we also just take a minute to appreciate how funny it was that the guy who started a health food company was somebody every suburban mom and by our age grandmother was extremely sexually attracted to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what the
there
comp
is no
would be
equivalent.
now,
Yeah.
and it would be in 60 years if we had Sydney Sweeney paper towels.
Yeah.
I mean, fingers crossed.
But I think it's even funnier to me because it's at a time when your wife wasn't really allowed to have a secret sexual attraction. So I mean, everybody knows that people are attracted to Sydney Sweeney.
It's the 80s though, so it's also the health craze. You got your Jane Fonda doing aerobics. Yeah. You got jogging and fat free stuff starts popping up around that time. Mom foods, huh? Only 90 kids will remember this. We've murdered the rest of them. Yeah. So he invents that stuff, but then in 1973 he writes this memoir. Honestly, Ian, were you able to figure out why Soderbergh gets into this?
I mean,
what happened to The Last Ship?
Yeah, if Jason, you want to?
There's actually an interesting connection that I found, which is that the rights for this movie were originally optioned in 1975. Shortly after the memoir's publication by a production company run by one Joanne Woodward, put it on the board, wife of Paul Newman.
Right, resident of the fuck hut. Do you remember that when his memoirs came out? Newman had one of those sort of time capsule, don't put this out until I've been dead for long enough, and it came out that they had a little outbuilding on their property that they referred to as the fuck hut.
Yeah, that's pretty special.
I don't think he made her live there. When I said resident, I think
I don't think so either.
To,
yeah,
co-owner of. Yeah,
I never am to kink shame, but I do question the name of the area. Does that really help things? Does that really,
turn the mood on,
so to speak?
Yeah. No, I think probably not.
Speaking of kink shaming, Ian's something of a hut sexual, and by that I mean Jabba.
Okay.
The
guy's got a lot of kinks in him. All right. As far as I know, this in the Sex Lives and Videotape book, Soderbergh talks about his post being a celebrity meetings, and one of his meetings is with this woman named Barbara Maltby of Wildwood, and she had been at the American Film Festival and was excited to work with him, and he had already read the novel. He was like, I am aware of this novel that I think would make a great film. In the Criterion interview, he talks about just thinking that it was basically easy to turn into a movie because it's full of these emotional incidents that he could tie together easily.
It's full of scenes.
Yeah.
But he also describes it as this kid gets caught up in a tree and people throw rocks at him for 3 acts, and then you get him down at the end.
Yes, that's correct.
That is what happens in the movie.
So he's like the one pushing this, though. He's like going around with famous people and saying, "I wish I could adapt this novel."
Well, he's been working with Robert Redford, Mr. Sundance himself.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, was that he had been working with Robert Redford previously. Robert Redford, in a pre-production press release that was put out about this movie, was listed as an executive producer and then didn't show up anywhere in the credits, which leads me to believe that they took him out because they realized they wanted to show it at possibly the festival. I'm not sure. It's interesting.
I know that Redford kind of ghosted Soderbergh. Like they had warm relations early on, and then Redford, I don't know, got
in the fuck hut,
sidetracked or something.
they've had some warm relations.
Warm relations in the fuck hut.
Group growth. I think
warm relations. That's Ian with Jabba. Okay.
This is surprising to me. It's because he gives somehow. So he ends up in talks with Redford. Redford gets the novel, as far as I understand, or the memoir, whatever you want to call it. He reads it, and then I think one of the things I could say to me is absolutely clear is Soderbergh pretty faithfully adapts both the facts and the atmosphere of the. Like, this is the type of book that it is. I don't know how you could be disappointed by this unless you expected Soderbergh to do more of what he talks about, sort of like regretting that he didn't do, which is making more choices to sort of like alienate the viewer, or like make it tough and simple, I think he says, or tougher and simpler. And sort of maybe that's what Redford wanted. He wanted like the sexualized and videotape treatment, this sort of like weird appraisal of an incident like this. But what he got is, to me, the book. So I don't know why he would have been upset by this film coming out.
I just assumed it was an interpersonal thing.
Oh, maybe. You mean they just didn't get along?
Yeah, or Redford.
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't know. Because Soderbergh at this time seems to be kind of zagging, and he doesn't, in interviews he seems amiable, but like the kind of guy who would just, he's a very specific guy, and if you don't get along with that, I don't think he doesn't seem like a people pleaser.
No, you're right.
Let's talk about let's describe the plot of the film, which is fairly straightforward, and then we can sort of continue our discussion. So the film is King of the Hill, we've been saying, and it doesn't. Hey, Dale Gribble, nowhere to be found. Boomhauer, not involved. Remember how Pamela Adlon was on Louis?
Yeah,
like a lot, and then she just kind of wiggled her way out of that.
I think wasn't she kind of normal about it? We don't have to get into this, but I thought she was sort of like, oh, that was pretty bad. Maybe that was somebody trying to paint her in a positive light for me.
I remember being in a Boy Scout meeting and some other kid's mom was talking about how TV was a bad moral influence, and like The Simpsons was so nasty, and she only let her kid watch Walker, Texas Ranger because it had good morals, had good lessons.
Cool.
And my mom being like, well, King of the Hill is pretty moral show.
Was she doing a bit?
Show? No, I think she was just trying to like justify having shown us The Simpsons and King of the Hill back to back.
Wow.
We also had like South Park VHS tapes.
Okay. Yeah. St. Louis, 1933.
It's the Great Depression. It is St. Louis, Missouri. There's a boy named Aaron who lives in a shitty hotel called the Empire Hotel with his mother and father and brother Sullivan. His dad is a unsuccessful salesman. His mother is tubercular. She's sick. He is, if you can believe it, a little writer boy he's kind of a boy about town. He's getting into schemes. His parents want to send his brother Sullivan away to save $1 a week. They want to send him to live with his uncle. And so sort of the beginning of the story has Aaron trying to find ways to make money so that he can keep his brother at home. And it's here where like what seems like it might be sort of a Sandlotty kind of warm story about the stuff that like a 12-year-old gets up to, it immediately becomes, it's very dark. It's a brutal world that this kid lives in. And so like he starts trying to breed canaries to sell the canaries to get money to keep his brother in his house. His brother, and the house sucks also. It's like a single room occupancy, like hotel that exists to pull money out of people who can't afford a better house. Sullivan gets sent away, and then his mom has to go back to a sanatorium.
Yeah, this is like a recurring part of their lives. And of the two of them, the dad is an extremely typical Depression-era father who, even when he's around, is absent, has no interest in parenting. The mom is doing everything.
She says, I'm worried about leaving you alone. Yeah. And the dad's like, I'll be here.
She's like, well, I'm worried about who's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And also, I think this is explained in the text of the film, but by Hotchner, he just straight up says she was also the only one making money. So she was doing like all the parts of being a parent, basically.
Right. And so his father gets a job as a traveling watch salesman. So he has to leave. And so this boy is now just alone in this house. There's various incidents we can get into of other children at school, like their parents taking pity on him or everyone making fun of him for being poor. He's got little schemes with his buddy Adrian Brody. He is menacing and menaced by this local cartoon policeman. There's an evil bellhop. And eventually he's so hungry that he cuts pictures of food out of a magazine and eats them. And then he has kind of a my stomach hurts, like dying of hunger hallucination sequence.
Yep.
And then his father gets a job with the WPA, and it all kind of just like works out. But the boy has now experienced such suffering that he sort of can't return to being a happy-go-lucky little boy.
Ultimately, just a few other incidents I think are worth highlighting. Sure.
Mr. Mungo.
Yeah, Mr. Mungo. We got Spalding Gray across the hall. I think these are some of my favorite moments of the film, are interactions with somebody who is both trying to be kind to Aaron, but is like totally just operating on levels that are like unrelated to Aaron's life, effectively. So even though Aaron is growing up, he's not growing up that much to reach this stage. And then he also sees like a painter get locked out, and he sees another girl on his floor with what seems like maybe epilepsy or something, become so broke that they can't afford her medication. But I think some of the stuff that like he can't come back from is realizing that his father, who told him like, don't worry, I got you set up for the summer. Like I paid for the room, and also I got made a deal to get you food from the restaurant across the street. And it turns out he paid so little for the room that he's still going to get kicked out, and he has to like barricade himself in there to avoid being locked out of his room. And food-wise, his dad made a deal with some slickster at the restaurant who was making deals with everybody. So
like paid him with a watch.
And Aaron doesn't get the food. So it's sort of like, wow, my father, even when he thinks he's delivered, none of this comes true. And ultimately, Aaron is the one who tricks his own uncle into returning his brother. Like he realizes he has to be the one to take the steps to figure this stuff out, and he brings his brother home.
Kidney box disease or something.
Kidney box fever, I think he says. Yeah.
So it's just brutal, and it like I remember when I watched this film twice now. The first time I watched it, my famous podcast girlfriend like had to leave the room because it was so cruel to this boy. First, he doesn't have any food. And then the girl down the hall has to leave, and his canaries are all born female, and the pet store owner was like, I've never seen this. I can't give you any money for these except 50 cents.
Yeah.
I've never seen this happen so badly before. And then the little boy, because he's a kind boy, gets a kitten for 50 cents for the sick girl who has to leave. She names the kitten Stephanie, which is its own fucked up.
Depression era.
What's going on?
Yeah. And then Mr. Mungo commits suicide, and the boy finds his body.
And then Mr. Mungo slits his wrist because his credit is no longer good at the same restaurant.
Where he was convincing a sex worker to stay with him because he could get her like food and lodging. In fact, he was like paying a sex worker on credit in the form of food.
And it's insinuated that he's like a former Roaring 20s investor guy who was. So that's the basic outline of the movie. I don't know where would you guys like to start?
Well, first,
discussion
I have a question for Jason because Jake shocked me yesterday. We were texting about the film, and I mentioned something about it being like a family coming of age film, and then Jake, I understand where he's coming from, but he said to me like, "Oh, do you think this is a film like for kids?" And I will say, oh, interesting. Jason is taking Jake's side. I think distinctly this is like, I don't know what this film is for if it's not for a family. I don't know why you would make this film if not for that reason.
Well, I will say there are some movies that were made around this time period that you could maybe argue in a similar way aren't intended for that. Not that I see these directly as... I see this as directly trying to ape those or anything, but obviously this is the year after Terrence Davies' Long Day closes. Both of those are a few years after John Boorman's Hope and Glory, which is quite good, and also... Which
has a very similar poster design to this film.
Yes, extremely. Terrible poster. By the way, when they're like, oh, this movie totally bombed, it's like, it should have. Like, you didn't sell it as like a pretty movie about the dangers of growing up in the Great Depression. You sold it as like cutesy wootsy, and it's like, it sucks. It sucks. Yeah. Like, the kids, you're watching a kid practically starve for half the movie. But no, I would suggest that there are a lot of movies like this, and you could certainly say that it hails upon a tradition that you could even say goes to something like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, where it's
400 Blows comes up a lot as a point of comparison,
where it's sort of like this sort of I don't know, middlebrow kind of prestige movie about the difficulty of growing up in a hard time. And I think there's a lot of precedence for that. That being said, it being so from the POV of children can kind of make it a hard sell. And so it definitely is not in an era of Dead Poets Societies and various other movies that were more Hollywood focused at this time. I can obviously see why this made very little money.
Yeah, I mean, It was rated PG-13, which is like that goes some way to indicating how they wanted to position it.
Sure. Although when I say children, I don't mean like your 6-year-old nephew or something. I mean like a young adult, a young person.
This is like a movie. Yeah, this is like I don't know, Fly Away Home or something, or like
October Sky.
October Sky. Yeah, it's like a little older than Harriet the Spy. But has a sort of a similar tone, similar vibe. We should say Jesse Bradford plays Aaron, and Jesse Bradford from Bring It On and Hackers and Clockstoppers as well. He was one of the original Clockstoppers.
He was.
They made that he can do that for real. That's why they cast him. I
mean, you're joking, but of course, I'm sure we all heard Soderbergh say that the reason they cast him is because I will say that. This is probably
fucking
this is to me. Unfortunately, I will say that like I think the movie like works well enough. It's good. I think Jesse Bradford, this type of child is sometimes difficult for me to watch in a movie, but I think it sounds like it's exactly why Soderbergh wanted to cast him. He says he was a kid who could do anything. For example, we were in Chicago screening the film, and after the film screening, Jesse Bradford, we were at a bar and he just ended up on stage playing the guitar with the blues band. I was like, what are you talking about?
This kid is he's a little scamp. He's a little bildungsroman boy.
But he
in
was
real
like,
life.
He's smart, he's athletic. And apparently even when Aaron Hotchner saw him, he was like, well, if I had been that hot, then all my problems probably would have been solved.
Yeah, so. He said attractive. Specifically, he said attractive.
He says attractive. But
like, yeah.
I just think that I get why you put this guy in the kid in the film, because I think Soderbergh says he's seemed like somebody who was coming up with schemes or like solutions, like he was like a kid about town. But I think there is a point where, to me, it becomes distracting. Maybe this is just because I'm too obsessed with thinking about authorial insertion into a story or something, where you're picking this extremely precocious kid who opens the film by telling like a school project story so good that the teacher's in tears about it or something.
Right. The teacher, Karen Allen, very clearly is like, you know, if only the kid were a little bit older. She's got that kind of a look to her.
I will say that sometimes something that doesn't work for me in Soderbergh movies, which, by the way, I by far and large really, really enjoy. I think his interrogation and attempts to upheave the last 15 years of film production have been great models going forward for lots of other filmmakers. Yeah. And I really don't criticize him particularly often. That being said, I will say something that I sometimes struggle with is his own level of almost hyping himself up as a disruptor. Then the climax of this movie does a very excellent part of that, where the movie the father sort of finally the father gets a WPA job. They are going to move into these nice luxury apartments that they've been sort of eyeing the whole movie, and then they're like, well, you'll never get out the front door with all your stuff. They're gonna repossess it so that they can hold on to it. And then of course the little kid Aaron breaks into the storeroom, is able to like hang his stuff out the window and drop it down the window to his younger brother. And then he takes all of the locks out that the bellhop had been using to lock people out of their apartments. And there's a degree in sometimes which, whether it be in something like High Flying Bird, which is like 30 years later, or even in this, that sometimes the Soderbergh as disruptor or as sort of smarty pants, we could even just say. Yeah. You know, I think can sometimes get distracting a little bit. I am extremely pro someone disrupting and destroying these structures. At the same time, his want to do it without ever trying to explicitly comment on it almost comes off as a little bit too glad-handing, I would say, maybe.
What's weird is that he places this film, I mean, I totally agree with you, Jason, but he places this film in the continuum of his films. He says about protagonists who, through sheer force of will, are trying to make the world work the way they want it to work. But it sounds like he is imagining a level of commentary, like what you're describing, like sort of wishing for. It sounds like he is imagining that Aaron doesn't succeed somehow, or we should look at this kid and see somebody who wishes he could make the world the way he wants it to be. But I agree with you that maybe the difficulty for me is that it's ultimately focused on a kid, at least in the way that they tell the story, who does kind of succeed in the way that he wants the world to work. I mean, obviously he's still suffering, and he wouldn't wish for his neighbor to have seizures or his other neighbor to kill himself or something. But yeah, his little schemes succeed. He does the marbles thing, and he beats.
The marble scene is he flicks a marble so hard he shatters a marble.
Yeah.
He's like,
I made the note. One of the few like mid-movie notes I made was like, marble scene doing too much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, he shatters the backboard of the marbles game.
Did you guys hear Did you hear the Hotchner story about that scene?
Yeah. Hotchner basically said that he was on set that day, as he was on set for much of the movie, and he literally was like, you can't have the kids shoot marbles like that. And Soderbergh's like, why?
Jason, you made an interesting choice to omit the word that he used to describe his kids. No, I'm not. I'm also not going to say the word. But he uses like an extremely old-timey phrase for the sort of like female-inflected style of this kid's shooting, like marble technique.
Correct. But then he decided to, as like a 80-year-old man, get on the ground with Jesse Bradford and take an hour out of the shooting schedule to properly coach him on how to shoot marbles. Which, by the way, the actual shots of him shooting marbles, maybe 3 shots, maybe 3 insert shots. Like,
yeah, I collected marbles as a child. I had a little wooden chest.
Oh, okay.
Like literally, like I'm making like the size of a small loaf of bread. Imagine like a banana bread sized chest.
Okay.
And I had my marbles in it. And I was vaguely aware that there was some kind of a game attached to these little objects. You never played
marbles, okay.
Well, who am I supposed to play marbles with?
Yeah, okay.
And then even in
you
even
had
in
a
this
sister.
scene,
why did you play marbles with your sister?
My sister was busy playing fucking Cruisin' USA. My sister was obsessed with driving video games.
Okay.
Something practical that she could use in adult life rather than being fascinated with the object of
just the
a small piece of glass.
Yeah, if she's ever in a Corvette underwater, she'll be prepared. She also, she's not like a great driver. Just
Women
sort of
drivers, am I right?
In the normal range.
Yeah.
Of drivers, but like this is not a Danica Patrick we're dealing with here. Some women are very professionally good at driving, and I'm not afraid to say it. On the podcast.
But you're also not accepting the counterfactual that maybe she would have been a terrible driver, and this has made a huge difference. Maybe it saved her life.
Right. Imagine without Cruisin' USA, without Cruisin' World.
Yes.
How bad she would be.
We're gonna make a remake of It's a Wonderful Life, but it's her walking through the version of her life without Cruisin' USA.
You know what's crazy is that she crashes her car all the time, but it just bounces off whatever it hits, and there's no visible damage. Okay, so I couldn't play marbles. This is why I brought this up. I was so freaked out during this sequence when they all drop their marbles at once. Like, how are these little boys going to keep track of which marbles are theirs? They had to memorize exactly the kinds of marbles that they had. That's I guess a 1930s type of knowledge. Where the world is just slower, You're right, but they're also playing
for the marbles, so the marbles may not end up being theirs.
For all the marbles.
But you're right, that they're meant to know which marbles are theirs, for sure.
They are meant to know. And then at one point, I believe Sullivan says that like one of the marbles is bad.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the other kid, the little...
No, you're right.
What's the dork-ass kid from the...
Billy
what's
Thompson?
The dork kid from The Simpsons? Nermal? No, his name's not Nermal, but like there's, the mouth-breathing like dweeb kid? Aaron has a real Bart Simpson energy to him.
But he's
not
as
much
good,
of a
good Bart Simpson.
He's good, but like sometimes, Bart's good sometimes. Like the episodes where Bart is like upstanding, where Bart is sort of learning a lesson about the world.
Yeah.
Imagine if they'd had skateboards in 1933. But then there's the scene where he's trying to hide the car from their repossessors, which like the tone of this film, the reason that I wondered if it was for children, and specifically I wondered if, like, in the making of it, Steven Soderbergh ever considered what a child would want to watch. Is like, it's got this tone where scenes will sometimes begin in a way that's like an October Sky or a Mouse Hunt ass, like, kind of hijinks way. And then there's just genuine, real peril. That is not like,
which I like. I like that part.
There's no release of tension though. It's as if the scene starts as the downhill sequence in What's Up, Doc, and ends with like Margaret. Like it's not. It's unpleasant, and I just want to help this boy, and I can't because he's in the TV.
What I think something that's interesting about that is the sort of inherent decisions that are being made when you're telling a movie from a child's perspective. And obviously it helps that Aaron Hotchner, A.E. Hotchner, talked about it, that he originally first tried to write the book as himself as an older man and looking back. And he
Stand
was,
By Me style or whatever?
And he was totally incapable of doing so and thought it was uninteresting. He said he got like 100 pages in. And then when he went back and tried to just be a kid again, that was when he was able to capture it. And I think what's
there's a fucking sorry. Speaking of the like, everyone's gonna know that he's shooting marbles wrong. There's a passage he reads at the beginning of this featurette on the Criterion disc where he talks about how in the summers in St. Louis it would soften up the street and you could scoop up a piece of black tar and chew it like Wrigley's.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck, man? First of all, how did you live to 102 if you're chewing asphalt?
Well, look, man, I don't know. Sorry. I want you to finish, Jason. You're in the middle.
No. But what I was going to say was that there's this level of like true grotesquerie in this story and in the realities of what happened. And this movie is trying to be both realistic about how it felt and how it was, while also still like kind of maintaining this child's POV. And it leads to this very interesting tension, which I don't know that is ever really fully resolved, which is like, for example, a scene that is not in the movie is that the name of the movie King of the Hill is an old game they used to play, apparently.
Right.
Brick. It was a big thing in St. Louis in the 30s, There were these big piles of like dust that they would play King of the Hill on, the game in which kids run up to the top and then like try and push each other off. And they said that literally one of the kids, as they were playing, fell into the dust in like a chamber in the dust and died. And it's sort of like there's something really messed up about the name of King of the Hill as the title of the book, that it really is like, no, this is more a story about what it took to survive in this horrific time and the way it completely decimated my childhood, rather than it really is something where it is a heartwarming coming of age. Like when you're talking about the real peril, everything about this is like, no, these are horrifying stakes, and this child is going to be forever scarred by it. And it's very funny that Hotchner, when he talks about it, doesn't actually seem that bothered by much of what happened.
I'm so glad you brought this up, Jason. I really wanted to talk about that story. I think it is critical because it's sort of like present and absent in the film. I think, first of all, I appreciated that aspect of this movie because, not to be the like cynic or the trying to return everybody to the bummers of reality, but this is not like an artifact of the past, this type of a childhood. This type of a childhood exists for hundreds of millions of children in the world today. So I think it's significant for me to see on screen somebody say, like you're saying, Jason, that not only does this happen, but this happens, and then people sometimes turn out mostly in a way that you wouldn't even recognize that this was a part of their life. And then maybe that's part of why it goes unseen. But I also think that the film, I mean, Soderbergh talks about wanting to make this picture that's like discovering somebody's choice to be optimistic or to continue to push on through these things. But then Hotchner describes these incidents that they elided in the film. The fact that in his life, the film finishes with them, like you said, Jake, dad gets the WPA job. They go to the nicer apartments. Obviously, he's grown up in a way that he can't return from. But there's sort of like a positive-ish resolution, at least in some of the circumstances. Hotchner describes the fact that they stayed in that apartment for like 4 months before they had to leave because his dad lost the WPA job. Like it fell through. I mean, that's the feeling that I get from that scene. It's like now he knows. I think so too.
This is as precarious as any other situation.
But I guess I wish that there had been like, that was like a bigger part of this. And maybe you can't do that because you are trying to maintain the interiority of the child. And obviously, even though he's discovered
slit their wrists in the movie theater.
Yeah, that's possible too. Maybe I'm.
And then it ends with the scene in the basement making the canoe dressing.
Right.
Like it all works out.
Sure. Yeah.
One day you'll end up in Westport with Paul Newman.
Exactly.
No, and I think sometimes also when Soderbergh.
God, imagine if they mixed up which hut they were going to, the fuck hut or the dressing hut, slipping around.
No,
Jesus Christ!
Two parts of the same hut. It's just
yeah.
You take the Newman zone, you bring it to the other side. He made his own Newman zone. Anyway.
God.
No, but I think something that sometimes this movie in its structure, in terms of, he described it as like a series of incidents, it almost never really escapes that to its detriment. And what I mean by that is like the climax of the movie is technically speaking, you could argue that it's when his brother comes home, and his brother comes home and brings food, and then shortly thereafter his dad comes home. Really what the climax of the movie is, and it goes so understated because it's this private moment of interiority, is when he is on the deepest level of hunger. He's sweating, he's convulsing, he's trying to get through a hot summer night by himself when he hasn't had actual real food in probably weeks. And he gives up hope that his father is like somebody who's a protector. This is shortly after this sort of like hallucination he has of his father leaving, and just like the objects tied up in the basement, he's tied up in the basement, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
He then takes some shitty, stupid thing his dad was selling and breaks it, throws it out the window, and it really is this like acknowledgement of, this man is not my protector. This is the role that I was supposed to have as a child is long gone and is definitely never coming back. And I think because the movie doesn't necessarily have much more of a shape than, here are these fun adventures, okay, this person leaves my life. Okay, here are these fun adventures, okay, this person leaves my life. It kind of doesn't make that funnel into that moment very strong. So when that moment happens, when I think about it in retrospect, I'm actually quite moved by it. I think about the beauty of the shot and all the different things, but at the same time, it's quite unremarked upon almost in the context of the movie, when it is sort of like actually the thing you should almost most take away from the movie.
No, kid. That's not how you throw your father's salesman goods out the window. Let me show you.
Yeah, interesting. This is one of the things I like about discussing film with people who I respect, because I will say that I think I had the opposite reaction.
He's never said that on one of the episodes where it's just him and me. Just thinking about that out loud.
No, because I'm totally convinced intellectually by what you're saying, in the sense that that moment is sort of under examined or something, and in theory, the idea, because earlier in the movie his mom is sort of defending the dad, saying like, in those candles you can see your dad's doing his best, his version of the best, and then for him to discover that might be true and also my dad's version of the best is never going to be enough to really help me, I think is a powerful realization. I mean, there's the other moment when his dad tells this supposedly heartwarming story of like, I could tell you how smart you are, just to do it very briefly in summation. I know how smart you are, kid, because when you were a baby and I was taking care of you by myself, I started throwing cold water in your face every time you cried, and you stopped crying really fast. So
yeah, you learned.
Then I would just had to hold the water. You would just stop crying, and it's like, so you tortured him. Like, okay, yeah.
But I will say that Soderbergh says something similar, where he says like, one of my challenges for sort of solving the movie, like script writing style, was to figure out how to make it less episodic. I think in general, just my attraction to storytelling means that the desire to make like an actual childhood less episodic feels somewhat dishonest to me, in the sense that like, I think some of my favorites, I was trying to think of coming of age films that I love. I mean, obviously, I would almost say like, to have the discussion, you have to exclude Miyazaki, because Miyazaki is so good at talking about coming of age. But
there is, though, I was thinking about, and we'll come back to this, but Cliff Martinez's score sometimes kind of reminded me of some of the Joe Hisaishi stuff from Miyazaki films.
I could see that.
Yeah, Miyazaki is in his own category.
Yeah, but I guess to me, like, that's somebody who is embracing the episodic nature and is not afraid of like. I mean, Kiki's Delivery Service, I think I remember some critics saying that like that's where it falls short, and to me that was like an early moment of, movie critics can be so wrong, because like that's
Totoro as well is very just like,
that's
this
what's
happens,
great about this movie is that your experience of life, maybe you end up retrospectively being able to tie things together, which I think is why maybe Hotchner shies away from the adult version, right? It's like, as an adult you try to see these through lines. As a kid, you're not reflecting on your life as like, this is the moment when I learned my dad couldn't take care of me. It's just a moment where you just hated your dad. Exactly. Yeah. And Soderbergh does talk about like the intensity of childhood feeling. I think that comes across in the movie. But yeah, and I don't know.
I'll definitely say I don't think that the movie is a failure in any sense. I myself was the one who chose this one to talk about, and I was excited to do so because there are a lot of qualities about this movie I really admire, and I really do recommend people check this out. I think it's a really important step in his career, and even for the various criticisms I have, absolutely. I just was trying to, when I heard Soderbergh refer to that, he wished that he was simpler and more brutal about what this was. Yeah, I do think that sometimes the almost discursive nature of Memory almost tended to hide some stuff that I think that he maybe wanted a little bit more not underlined, but highlighted and focused on. And that's personally what I think, sometimes where this movie can fall short. That being said, if you don't mind me sort of switching it to a positive here for a moment.
No.
Sure.
I will say,
well, that's childhood, Negative, positive all the time.
Father, mother, you always wrestle inside me. Da 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 da. This movie shot by Elliot Davis.
Yes.
At this point, still relatively early in his career, cinematographer, but sneaky put up one of the better decades that a cinematographer can do. Here is the other funny little incidental thing about this movie, and over the last year or so, I watched this movie for the first time maybe 9 years ago when the Criterion disc came out, and I hadn't seen it since. So I hadn't really been front of mind in any way, shape, or form. Over the last year, I've become a little bit of something of an Alan Rudolph guy. Shout out to friends at Altmania.
Big shout
out to Altmania.
And I did not know that the gentleman who shot this had also just shot Love at Large by Alan Rudolph, and Equinox, one of my very favorite movies of the 90s and one of my favorite movies, period. You guys had mentioned on Sex, Lies, and Videotape that Soderbergh had really responded to moderns. So it's actually not shocking to me that he ended up working with Elliot Davis. And I'll note also, immediately after this, he then goes on to do The Glass Shield and Nightjohn by Charles Burnett, which are Glass Shield, if you've never seen it, has some of the most stunning, surreal photography you'll see in any studio movie. And obviously he'll go on to make Underneath, Grey's Anatomy, and Out of Sight with Soderbergh. So this is the first of a few collaborations with him. But sneaky, all of that work in one decade is pretty crazy, from Out of Sight to Equinox to Glass Shield,
It's a really specific pipeline, but yeah, we talked about the other DP that Soderbergh's been working with, who he also basically ended up stealing off an Alan Rudolph recommendation because he couldn't get Alan Rudolph's other DP. And then that dude also went on to work with Charles Burnett to make... so, I mean, I think it's like, I don't know what was going on. Obviously, Soderbergh just liked, admired Alan Rudolph's films a lot. They seemed to enjoy the look of them. And then I don't know how these people ended up with Charles Burnett. Unfortunately, I wish I did, but...
There's another weird connection, which is, Jason, you appeared on the Hit Factory podcast to talk about Equinox, and Hit Factory is co-hosted by a guy named Aaron from St. Louis.
You're watching the walls around me fall like sand.
Yeah, exactly.
That is correct.
And that guy eats paper too. I don't know. Is that like an insult?
No, I think that's a good. Let's lay some secret gossip down over here. I've seen it. We went to a restaurant with him. And he ordered paper. They brought it to him.
He said, "Do you have any magazine pictures of dog food?"
Yeah.
And they did.
Next time I speak to Aaron, I'll ask if he had any neighbors who killed themselves. No, but.
But by the way, I just wanted to shout out a few other Elliot Davis joints real quick, because this is a weird one of those.
I mean, the guy he's a gamut runner. This guy. He's
a real gamut runner. He's in the Scorch.
Yeah.
So he shoots the Underneath Grey's Anatomy, as we mentioned, Out of Sight. He also shoots. He continues to work with Alan Rudolph, does Breakfast of Champions. You got 40 Days and 40 Nights, the classic Josh Hartnett Can't Come movie. You've got White Oleander.
Wait. I'm sorry, we cannot skip past a movie that jokingly climaxes with rape, by the way. I don't know the last time you remember. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. First of all, features a scene where he makes Shannon Sossaman come by blowing leaf petals on her stomach. Real thing that happens in that movie.
Wow, I don't remember that at all.
The climax of the movie is, spoiler alert, for 40 Days and 40 Nights, he can't come, right? That's the whole bit, is that he's not supposed to come for 40 Days and 40 Nights, and there's a bunch of money on it. So his ex-girlfriend breaks into his house when he's delirious and then rapes him so that he came before the end of the 40 Days and 40 Nights and thus loses the bet.
Wow.
Insane movie.
Yeah, insane.
Sounds nasty. We're going to cover the work of Michael Lehman. coming up next on the show. But he also becomes a Catherine Hardwicke guy, so he shoots 13 and The Lords of Dogtown. But then he is also responsible for the look of Twilight, which is really crazy because that is a movie that looks so bad. I mean, I like the Twilight movies on the level that thinking people do, but it's a bad look. He then shoots Legally Blonde 2, Red, White, and Blonde. That's of course the one where she goes to Congress to lobby for animal rights. He shoots Nate Parker's Birth of a Nation.
He does, yeah.
More in the Twilight looking mode. And then most recently he shot Hocus Pocus 2, which and
he shot Man of Tai Chi. I mean, I feel like one of the things,
Man of Tai Chi is a good looking movie.
That's what I mean.
And,
so it's also just a different type of looking movie. One of the things I feel like you learn as a fan of film is first you start to recognize DP's work and think you're very smart because you're sort of like, this is a classic.
Yeah, Gordon Willis.
Exactly.
I can tell.
Yeah, this is Prince of Darkness stuff. But then I think the bigger brain version is a lot of choices involve so many other people that actually you have no way of guessing like whose influence this really is unless there's hard evidence.
And they talk about, like, Soderbergh talks about how there's no primary colors in the whole movie. It's all, he talks about Edward Hopper.
Yeah.
And wanting reflective surfaces everywhere. The movie is, like, bright in a way that's, like, hard to look at and does feel like the summer as a child.
Yeah.
It's good. It's effective, but in a way that's sort of unpleasant. And everyone's sweating, of course.
One thing I will say is that with his career, like many others, with like many other DPs that were working in his time, you definitely see like the inability to like adjust to a changing mode of production. And so there are these guys who make these like really beautiful and consistent work, whether you could say Tak Fujimoto, whether you could say Dean Kundi. There's a number of these guys who are like making really, really solid work for the 80s and much of the 90s, and then just suddenly sputter out when things pivot and everything becomes tentpole. And unless they're needed for some really specific technical reason, like Dean Kundi,
like Kundi
in Jack and Jill.
Or Garfield or whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Jack and Jill primarily used a technology he founded on Back to the Future 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because two actors in the same place. Yeah. So basically, unless...
Wait. No. That movie's it's about Adam Sandler and his sister.
Fair. I'm sorry.
What are you saying? What are you saying to me?
No taken. No, but unless they had this really specific reason for it, these guys just sort of never adjusted to the fundamental times. And again, you can even see guys, even really, really talented guys like Darius Kanji or
Bojan Bazeli shooting G-Force, I always think about,
guys who came in a little bit later, like even ultimately just being like, I'm really only going to do independent or complete creative control productions, and I'm not going to do anything else. So it's interesting. It's a weird thing of the thing, and it's funny that Soderbergh ends up taking that element out of the equation himself by just doing it himself, because these guys, possibly maybe his experience on some of these movies led him to it, maybe could not adjust with what he was trying to do, and he moved on.
Although I respect it, I mean, Walt Lloyd follows the exact same track. I think after the collaborations with Soderbergh, he shoots shortcuts with Altman. So obviously he's like knows what he's doing. And then from then on, he shoots like TV, and he makes what was that? The Air I Breathe, like this sort of like really low non-prestige movies. I don't know. So it's a similar arc. But Soderbergh, I give him credit. He talks about this film and he says, I asked for this look. I got exactly what I wanted. And then after this, working with Elliott for the next few films, he continued to get what he wanted in like different ways. So he says that, I sort of regret the look of this movie because it's so beautiful and maybe
he's made it too pretty.
Yeah, and it's going against maybe this idea of like the way a kid sees it at the time, because I feel like that's more of a classic looking back at a childhood choice is to like gloss it up or to soften the edges or something, whereas the way a child experiences it is distinctly not glossed. I think the way a child experiences the world around them is in like particularly sharp contrast or sharp relief. I also, just while we're shouting out positive stuff, the film has a bunch of minor characters that sort of only ever play minor roles in his life. And I think that they're all really well done and well cast. Yeah. I mean, like Lauryn Hill's character, it's the type of thing that in a lesser movie you would expect to amount to something or like become this a big emotional arc. But she's an elevator operator. She's, there's kind of these fun shots where she's in like extreme close up. Yeah, she chews gum. She gives him some gum for his graduation. And then her job is removed for depression era reasons. And that's it. That's the whole arc. Or Ron Votter as the, I think is uncredited as the hotel owner, Mr. Dessett.
Right. He was the therapist in Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
I thought he was great. I thought it was like this moment where you're expecting another cartoon policeman and you get this guy who's like been put in a bad position. Maybe like he is also, I mean, he's a landlord, so I'm not too sympathetic to him, but if he's telling the truth, his hotel belongs to the bank now. And so he's not even the one locking people out of their rooms. He's like a middle manager at best. So I don't know. I think the film in the non-major emotional development moments is maybe more interesting to me sometimes than the main stuff.
I definitely agree with you that I think the movie is sometimes pulling in different directions where it almost would be stronger if it was just this sort of discursive, not quite serious sort of touring through these things. But at the same time, maybe that isn't being as honest as Hotchner would have wanted. And you sort of get in this space where the movie is kind of not quite sure where it needs to be. So the whole movie is very confident and moving forward, but at the same time, it is sort of like, where and what am I supposed to take from each of these scenes? I will also note two child performances that are quite good, other than Jesse Bradford, who we haven't really discussed, but is quite strong in this.
Very.
I think so too.
I think he does a really good job. Two really good child performances.
Hot kid too, really hot kid. Hotchner told me about this, but just looks like $1 million.
Yep.
Right as hard drive. No,
come on. Hey, come on.
The sick girl.
That's a. I don't have RAID installed on my hard drive. That sounds too complicated. Hey,
Amber Benson. You want to shout out Amber Benson?
Buffy's Amber Benson, as well as is the girl with epilepsy. Katherine Heigl, a very young Katherine Heigl, is the pretty popular girl.
I like the Heigl performance.
Yeah. I did too. Yeah. And talk about writing. It does not go anywhere you want. She's actually, even though she's like the pretty and popular girl and he's like the poor teacher's pet with immigrant parents, she's like totally nice to him and doesn't ever once really do anything. And even when the tables, even when the cheek turns on him and the rest of his peers because they all realize he's lying about these things, she actually never explicitly does anything negative. She's sort of like looking
confused
at him. Yeah, she's just like,
I think
why'd
it's a
you
good
just
reaction.
tell me a lie? Yeah. And then he, of course, interprets that as, I'm found out, they all hate me, da-da-da-da-da, and runs out.
But it's mostly projection,
Right. She's not actually doing much. One other real note I will say about the shooting of this is that with Elliot Davis, a lot of the stuff, particularly towards the back end of the movie, is really strong and painterly and actually captures some really beautiful things, like, for example, when you live close to streetlights or towards cars, the way that light will seep in through the night, and you'll often be lying at your bed looking up and seeing that. I have experiences and memories of that living near to a road. And there's a shot near the end when Sullivan, his brother, comes home, where the two of them hug, and, Soderbergh sort of paints this movie as being too pretty, but that shot alone, I think, kind of almost justifies making the movie look as gorgeous as it does, because it is in a moment of like, God, I need something to let up, and then his brother comes home, and the two of them embrace in the doorway at night, and it's like one of the most gorgeous shots you'll see in anything, and incredibly emotional. So I do want to shout out the stuff that does work,
For sure. And then I think the final moments between him and Sullivan are almost so good and naturalistic that it detracts from some of the other stuff, because that is like seeing kids mostly as they are, right? Whether it's we're losing the interiority and that you could see that as like a betrayal of the perspective, I don't know. But it works for me because that like Sullivan also has just some great line readings where
Sullivan's great. The Cameron Boyd, this kid didn't really do a whole lot.
I know. I was sorry to see that, but yeah, like Aaron is explaining what they're gonna do, and Sullivan says, "Oh, I get it," which is like a kid thing to say about like a weird plan. But you're talking about shots. I also want to say, Jason, that the through the transom, like over the door shots, where talking about light coming in from like an outside source, where he's like slightly backlit by his own room, but mostly lit by the light of the hallway, slightly lit by the light of the room across the hall that he's like trying to understand, trying to reach and connect to Mr. Mungo, to the Spalding Gray character, who, again, I think is wonderful. Spalding Gray, just kind of like magnetic presence on screen for me. So even though we know Soderbergh is going to become extremely obsessed with him, I kind of get it.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, we should shout out Joe Crest. Maybe it's Trest. It can't be Trest. Joe Crest, who is he was an LSU guy and becomes like he's a Soderbergh repeat player who plays Joe. Wait, no, what's the guy's name? Ben.
Yeah.
Ben. His name's Joe. Ben, the just pure evil bellhop. I mean, just like a kind of. I think a man driven to cruelty by circumstance, or maybe allowed to let his cruelty flourish. He's a Spike Lee guy as well, but he's in like Ocean's 13 and
Out of Sight, Aaron Brockovich,
Out of Sight, Clock Watchers, which is not Clock Stoppers, but he's got a good face. Elizabeth McGovern, who plays the sex worker who hangs around with Mr. Mungo. I believe she was a contender for the Andy McDowell part.
Soderbergh's first choice, which I gotta say, I like Elizabeth McGovern. I think she's good in this movie. Cannot imagine that film with her.
She looks
totally
like a
different
baby.
affect.
She's got like a real baby face.
Yeah,
in this
she
too.
does. And I don't know. It's one of those, speaking of sliding doors things, I'm happy that it didn't work out.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Great Depression. You guys ever heard of this event before?
Great Depression, that's when Jabba's on top of Ian. So,
yeah.
So.
Oh boy. Wait.
We're trying out a lot of cowgirl stuff.
Yes. Yes.
That's Kimmy saying yes.
I see.
You met Bobby. Stop eating all the magazine pictures. It's me, Caine, the computer lady from inside the computer.
He never said
Turned Kimmy into a 4-syllable word. So.
Yeah. Can you hear me? So, the Great Depression on screen, first of all, I basically never like. I mean, it always feels like. It always feels like one of those books that they make you read over the summer so that everyone can come back and talk about.
It's like insulting to the audience and to the event often somehow.
Yeah. I was thinking about, Jason, you brought up The Long Day Closes, which is one of my very favorite films. I think a terrific film. Terrence Davis's follow-up to that is The Neon Bible, which is one of those movies so unloved that it's still only on DVD. And with good reason. It's not very good, I think. It's a adaptation of the John Kennedy Toole novel. It's like maybe immediately post Great Depression, but it's like a boy coming of age in Georgia. His mother is Jenna Rollins. His father is Dennis Leary. And in the early parts of the film, he is played by Drake Bell. Very funny to think of Drake Bell and Terrence Davis working together. But it's like, I don't know. It's, as you said, Ian, it's always sort of condescending. And like people putting on these costumes and, a lot of money going into making people look really poor and destitute is kind of nasty and tiresome. But at the same time, like we clearly have not learned anything.
No. Yeah.
And they accept just like how to come up with a kind of bespoke measurement of unemployment that makes it look like it's at 4% when it's really at Great Depression levels. Like if you're considering what it means to be employed in a way that lets you pay for your life,
Yeah, I mean, thinking of other Great Depression on film stuff, a lot of it feels like Paper Moon or Sting, where I almost prefer the Sting, where I prefer those films because they're embracing like a theatricality or like a vaudevilleness, but the other films use that and are in denial about it. So yeah, I totally understand. In terms of films that I actually like, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? I think is like focusing on a really specific event. And can I make you feel bad, not by talking about the wider Great Depression, but by talking about like just how people would feel around this instance, I think is maybe more interesting.
Well, I agree that it almost seems as though at least Hollywood cinema seems best when it's approached discursively. I mean, the only actual thing I can kind of think of would be something like Grapes of Wrath, which was technically not the Depression, but whatever. But what I'll say is that the things that do it discursively sometimes are quite excellent at it, and I would say that something like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? You could go Bonnie and Clyde. You could even go like Modern Times by Chaplin. There are things where, when approached sort of through genre, it feels as though maybe it's a little bit more authentic because it's not trying to make the focus the Depression. It's just a byproduct of the film's nature.
You're talking about Ruben Fleischer's Gangster Squad? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I think that's the main thing he was thinking of, yeah.
I tagged the Instagram post for our episode on the Master Gardener. I tagged it hashtag Venom because I think Venom 3 had just come out. And I get like 4 bots a day liking that post.
Oh, cool.
So Ruben, I don't know. Ruben Fleischer has
the
juice, is what I'm saying. Sorry, Jason, I interrupted you, but like there's it's when you try to make like the Depression film, it often feels like homework to me, and yet, you know, this film ends with like kind of the New Deal working its magic. We seem to be currently engaged in, I guess, the old deal.
Yeah.
Where they're taking all the government jobs away to help.
Yeah.
And I was reading, I mentioned before, was reading some macroeconomic theory.
Checking out some of our old friend JMK.
Yep.
Had to.
Yep. Maynard James Keenan from the band Tool.
Yeah.
But you know, there's 2 ideas when you want to reduce inflation. One way is to force unemployment.
Yeah.
So that wage demand can go down. People have less leverage,
which is what people were
in asking for higher wages.
Just talking about recently in the middle of the inflation, right? Was like just unemploy a bunch of people to cool down the economy. Inflation
is definitely the fault of some guy trying to get a job. And then there's another school that says that guaranteeing jobs can reduce inflation because of, again, like big sort of concepts that I can barely wrap my head around because I didn't get a degree in economics because I'm not a psychopath. Ian, do you understand any of this?
Yeah, sure. Like demand side economics, you're basically saying like create an educated commodity buying public through jobs, right? Create people who are both going to accelerate the economy in terms of productivity because they're educated and have skills, whatever. Obviously, that's a nasty phrase, but... And also fix the economy by creating people who can buy stuff, and then you're not going to have the monetary issues that you have because they can use their money.
Which, by the way, our president, commander-in-chief, did in his last term to great success. And it is always interesting when we have a proven track record. Obviously, many people who claim to like or enjoy history clearly are not saddled by any thought or reason based on history.
Of precedence.
But
sure.
yes, of course.
Yeah,
but it's like, hey, if only we
had
had
the
like
statues were beautiful. The statues used to be so beautiful.
That's,
now our art is debased. People are doing a freaking urinal now instead of
a woke urinal
sculpture. Yeah. It's all Wokemon. You know, I don't know.
Woke him on to the polls. I do think that there's when history is not in any way important or instructive, it's very easy to just say, hey, how about we do this comically ghoulish thing? Maybe that'll help, you know?
Right. Yeah. Maybe we just enrich ourselves openly and someone will think that's like badass. I guess. Yeah. Another thing I was reading about is like the way that guaranteeing employment, it will also prevent like the loss of skill, because if you're unemployed for 5 or 6 years, you like don't have the practice, and also as systems naturally evolve, you're not like keeping up with the latest, hydroelectric dam maintenance technology just to invoke something that this famous government job creation program, the WPA, it also helped like build a big dam or whatever. And, there's a lot of stuff that's all fucked up. Basically, everything is all fucked up. And what if we put everybody to work fixing some of it? What if we need as Nancy Pelosi called it, we need a green dream or whatever. Remember when she called the Green New Deal the green dream or whatever?
No, I will say, not to bring this to, not to take something very serious and real and material and turn it into something stupid and artsy-fartsy, but...
That's the name of the show, actually.
I will say that something that I do really appreciate about Steven Soderbergh is that when I think about what I'll be trying to use to explain this time to my kids, Steven Soderbergh movies will actually be quite instructive.
Right.
And whether that's Girlfriend Experience being made coming out 3 weeks before we entered a global recession and a stock market crash, all of these various things that his movies sort of both incidentally and intentionally capture. A great example is High Flying Bird and the theoretical relationship between workforce and worker becoming even more and more and more relevant since that movie came out, which was only a couple of years ago. We don't have to get into sort of, dying empire stuff, but it is important that it feels like we have chroniclers like this who are there making stuff about this. And I don't believe either of you guys saw his new movie, Black Bag, in theaters now.
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Wow.
I haven't seen it yet.
Wow.
Bolsa Negra,
It's almost like you actually have a podcast about Steven Soderbergh, and yet you refuse to support the man in his endeavors.
It's still the opening weekend. I'm going this evening. I've been busy preparing to talk about his earlier work.
Precisely why I haven't seen the film, which I don't know. Probably he doesn't care about us having a podcast and would like to receive 13 cents or whatever. So sorry.
Yeah. That's probably true.
Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they... you said you didn't want to bring up the dying empire, but they literally live in a falling down hotel called the Empire.
Yeah.
This is... Which is also the name of... That sounds like a hotel, That's like a reasonable hotel name. But...
What I was just going to say is that even now, whether it's, you guys talking about Reagan stuff in Sex, Lies, and Videotape to his most recent movie, which is functionally about the West's foreign policy. That is what I will say about Black Bag, a movie that is very interested in the realities of the West's foreign policy with the rest of the world. Also, be warned, it's way more British than you think it is. It's so British.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe how British it is. I was shocked.
It's Fassbender's back in a turtleneck.
I promise you it's even more.
Who do you think, to kind of put together a lot of what we're talking about? I'm going to ask the two of you. The Luigi movie. Would you prefer Soderbergh or Fincher?
Oh, I don't think I want either of those guys to make the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that either of those two men and the way that their brains are hardwired are really strong. Gonna throw that out there.
So you want Clint?
I mean,
yes.
I think you're going to make that, Joe. That's the more obvious choice to me, is the unsung hero.
Or Clint or Schrader or Soderbergh.
Paul Schrader's Luigi Mangione movie, which is just about his back issue, which means he can't have sex anymore, and then that spins into political nihilism. Yeah, that sounds like a Schrader movie.
We should say though that he is allegedly involved in that crime. To be clear,
Paul Schrader.
That alleged crime.
Luigi
Mangione.
Got it.
He's not been convicted of anything, and also it's arguable that there's nothing to convict.
Yeah. No, I think you got to bring in like a Takeshi Kitano or a Kiyoshi Kurosawa or something. These are the guys who can make this movie.
I like that. What about like the Dardennes or something? Like I think it would mostly.
I would watch
mostly
that.
be
I would watch
about
that. Like over the shoulder, quiet.
It would be immediately after from him like checking out of the hostel to getting arrested in McDonald's. That's the Dardenne space.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think the real answer, of course, is Conor O'Malley, but he's already making this film over and over again.
Right,
So
all the time.
I'm working on a little pipe rock theory of my own. I've been smoking crack cocaine. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
No. It would probably help me get some stuff done around here, though. Do we have any final thoughts about King of the Hill?
I just wanted to respond to Jason. I totally agree. This series, more and more I'm thinking of. I mean, Soderbergh talks about, like, for him, he looks back at this more than anything as practice for what he wanted to do in a film or like what he was interested in. But I think this is, as a run of post, in quotes, end of history films, looking at like what is it to be in the US without an enemy and with the economic conditions that we had, having KAFKA, having this, and then Underneath, and then even getting to Out of Sight, I think it's like a really strong stretch of what are we doing? What are we trying to do? Because we're not doing New Deal stuff. We even, now that we have this supposedly fixed economy for most of the 90s, what are we choosing to do with this success? Or like, who is it enriching? Who's it benefiting?
And that's Brockovich. That's Traffic.
Yeah, Brockovich, exactly.
Yeah. Like in a lot of ways, he's an interesting person in that obviously his politics are kind of nebulous. He refuses to be explicit about really anything. Everything is this sort of strange obfuscation. Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he's unquestionably super invested and interested in exploring these spaces in a very real way. And again, whether that be something like Girlfriend Experience the movie or Girlfriend Experience the show, it can be all of the different things, side effects, there's tons of examples, and Black Bag's another good example. He's too invested in it for it not to be clearly such a huge part of his personhood. And I don't know that we need, especially after seeing something like Black Bag, I don't know that we need something that has more explicit commentary than, say, what that movie offers. I think it does a pretty good job, if you know where to look. But he's very interesting, and considering that this movie came out the day after I was born, to now, I'm happy that you guys are taking a look back at him and understanding sort of where each of these steps comes from. There's one other thing, which is, as I spoke about very briefly,
Jason Colombo over here.
That I spoke about very briefly earlier on, which is that his mode of production evolving as we reach the collapse of Hollywood as we understand it, which is the time that we're living through now. Which, by the way, I don't think my last talking point and this talking point are unrelated in any way, shape, or form, but I'll keep it easy on that. Something that he talks about his quote-unquote failures on this film, which again, I largely would say are overstated to some degree. He talks about his first 9 years and the first 7 films. He has this clearly as a talking point in his head, that phraseology has been set in stone, that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that it was very necessary, that he was upset with himself and mostly fine with how the system worked then, and now he's fine with his work, but he's upset at the system now. But the most important thing that he said is that filmmakers now don't get to make the mistakes. And this is something often repeated. Wes Anderson very famously had 4 movies that made no money before he actually had like any kind of commercial success, and he was still allowed to be a director with large stars. Obviously, I mentioned Alan Rudolph and all these other various cinematographers who seemed to, regardless of their level of out there-ness or ubiquity, still were capable of making movies and being professionals very consistently for a very long time, and then very quickly after the turn of the millennia that spigot got shut off. I think that he is someone that's very interesting to study in terms of how we can move forward, and whether that's production, whether that's distribution, whether that's post-production. All of these things I think are really interesting things to think about and talk about. And if I had to guess something that I'll actually really enjoy about Steven Soderbergh years down the road is that he's very right about all these things. And I wish more directors now got the chance to get it out. I'm a big classic Hollywood guy, and I constantly think about how most of the people who made classic Hollywood movies usually were on film sets for like 10,000 hours before they ever became a director, that before you would ever watch a Michael Curtiz movie, he had made 60.
Right, and Don Siegel is also doing montage editing on the Michael Curtiz movies before he ever gets to do Don Siegel movies.
I was really happy to hear Soderbergh say this, Jason, but I will say that I only half agree with him, because I think it's true that, of course, even we recorded a Patreon episode about Arthur Penn, and he made a similar statement where he's like, look, people say that some of my movies are smaller or less important, or maybe even not as high quality, but you look back at Ford or Raoul Walsh or something and say these people were making dozens, if not hundreds of movies, and
he made 105 movies.
Some of them are throwaway films, and like you say, but I also think it's important to qualify history and say some people were getting a lot of chances to make mistakes. But even if we look at the studio system, it's not like this was something that was open to everybody and everybody was getting. We talked about this, for this period of Soderbergh's career. I totally agree that people are getting fewer chances now in some ways, which is a huge bummer. But I also think it's important to have you're talking about a robust sense of history and recognize that, there was plenty of people who were being shut out or were just never getting the opportunities in the first place to do this.
Well, this is where I think he is an interesting person, because I think that he takes some of that old school mentality. A lot of his unusual production choices are actually just stuff they used to do back then. Editing dailies is not really a thing that happens anymore, but by the time Soderbergh has arrived at wherever he's eating dinner at, the dailies are already edited. Mm-hmm. This used to be common practice, and so I think he is working in some way trying to fuse certain elements of older Hollywood with newer elements as well to make something a little bit more available. And your point is 100% right. All I mean specifically in terms of my statement is that the people who you would see get to make movies got tons of chances at it.
Yeah.
And so when we ended up with a movie with somebody who was a little bit more battle tested. Now, that being said, it is also important to say that the breadth needs to be expanded. We need more. And in a time where we all have more capability to make a movie than anyone has ever had at any point in history, it is also worthwhile to note that it's hey, these processes of getting your mistakes out and making and hopefully being employed to do so are really what make people really, really talented filmmakers. And again, you think of Out of Sight as kind of Soderbergh's breakout after Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and it's no, he had a whole career in between then, you know, and you'll see. I mean, obviously, you guys are talking about Underneath next. That is a very good example of a movie that is getting some of its mistakes out, is doing a lot, and maybe should do less. But it's very important that I think that his work process be studied, because I think there are so few people who are capable of working like him now because of larger macro circumstances. And so us seeing how these people who do adapt, whether it be somebody completely and totally independent, somebody as off the grid as Hong Sang-soo, who I mentioned off pod, or someone like Soderbergh, who's still functionally kind of within the system, of course, in many ways out, but in many ways in, study how they adapt to these times, because if he's able to get stuff out, other people should be able to find their own way, hopefully.
And I think that's his goal, which that part I do admire very much.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's all, everything you said, Jason, about how effective a chronicler he is of this time, I think has helped to illuminate why this period piece about a child is not exactly what I want from Steven Soderbergh, because he's so good at making movies about adults and so good at making movies about right now, or, you know, the right now of the film when it comes out.
So is Hong Sang-soo also good at making films about right now?
Yeah, well, wrong.
No, and I'll say, even they intentionally very much hide this, but the entirety of Black Bag is about the war between Russia and Ukraine. Like, again, there and Western foreign policy in relationship to proxy wars. Like, these are all things that, like, he is really adept at, and so I'll take, you know, I like this movie, and it's good, and it's very pretty.
Yeah.
I do say that I like the direction he's chosen to head in a little bit.
I wish that it had the tar chewing.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to show us the depression, show us the depression. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that is one of my feelings about depression films. You're right.
I saw no person packing up their stuff in like a handkerchief attached to a
bindle?
stick.
Mhm.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is a no bindle movie. To close us out, I have something that I have to do, so I'm going to be right back.
Okay. I don't know what this is. This is
Is he going to come back in costume or something?
He's never done a mid-show costume change, so I'm really curious about it. Okay, there's no costume change.
Okay, so you're talking about the beautiful shots in the film. And we're talking about Mr. A.E. Hotchner. And, he came from difficult beginnings, but he ended up living in a house full of birds. He was a bird guy for his whole life. And was able to enrich himself and help the world through salad dressing. And did I say already that you were talking about the beautiful shots in the film?
Yeah.
Beautiful shots.
So I'm going to take a shot of salad dressing right now. Newman's own classic oil and vinegar. 100% profits to help kids. They also have a little, you can see like a little easy pour spout, like they sort of slows the pour of the dressing from the bottle, which I like.
No need.
We don't want it slow.
Well, yeah, but like...
You need to go college kid mode, like when you pop out the like shot limiter from the pop-off vodka thing, so you can...
Exactly. That's why they call it pop-off. So anyway, L'chaim to A.E. Hotchner, Paul Newman, and that great fuck hut in the sky.
I gotta tell you, man.
I went down real easy.
It looks... It's kind of making my mouth water. I don't know what's happening. Maybe I've watched too many movies
mine too. That's interesting.
with ketchup soup recently. It looks good to me.
Just think of how many shots of Newman's own A.E. Hotchner would have taken back in the day.
I was about to say, unfortunately, you're disrespecting the film, and I'm going to have to ask you for the next 20 days to survive off of only Newman's own shots.
I mean, it's got 160 calories in 2 tablespoons.
Pretty similar to a dinner roll. Probably about 200 calories.
If I did 10 shots a day, I'm in basically like not maintenance calories, but I'm in like death slowing calories. Yeah, red wine vinegar and spicy brown mustard hitting the back of your throat in a big glob is really quite something that I encourage both of you to experience this.
I don't have to speculate that much. When we were in college, we had a slow day, I guess, and we had to figure out which one was worse, taking a shot of straight olive oil or taking a shot of straight vinegar. And the answer was definitely the olive oil. And I will
just hard to get down.
Yeah,
or?
just
thick.
Just a quantity of like lipids in your mouth that is just unacceptable.
Wow. Hey, enough about your time with Jabba. That's about gonna do it. Oh, we have that thing we do. It's stupid, and it's so stupid that I forgot to have Hank Hill say it.
Now it's time for Going Haywire, the part of the show where we pick which character from the film we'd most like to see overdubbed by actress Laura San Giacomo.
So this is something we've come up with to try to end the show. It's not working out. I kind of like that we're in our 90s Soderbergh.
We get to ditch it in about 3 movies, you're saying.
Yeah, actually that's perfect. We'll come up with a good segment just in time for Out of Sight. So, I mean, first of all, I promised this on the KAFKA episode. I learned how to say his name is Jeroen Krabbe.
Yeah, we didn't even get it in. Thanks
Mr.
for doing
Bizelbeck from KAFKA, who plays the father in this film, who is Dutch and I guess doing a German accent. I'm not sure.
Well, in real life, his dad was Polish, I think, too, right? So I don't know.
I thought, no, his dad was German, I think. I don't know. Anyway, him.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Okay. What about you guys?
Hotchner clearly felt that Jesse Bradford was quite attractive. I vote we lean into that. How about...
give him the sort of husky voiced... Yeah.
I think this is a really strong choice. I like that a lot. I was going to say the big butt cop from the street would be funny if it was...
I would like that.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Officer Bohunk.
Yeah, the one
That
who keeps
might do
calling him a
something for
bohunk.
me, I'll be honest.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a simpleton.
Jason's starting to pull on his own ear right now. It's weird.
I'm
Well-
spilling my iced tea everywhere.
Oh, no.
Disgusting. All right. Well, that's about going to do it for us on this episode, King of the Hill.
Lead of battle angle.
So, anyway, that's our episode on King of the Hill. Jason Miller, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
joining us.
Jason.
Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Paid Costly for me has been
Wow.
putting out some nice
he's
stuff lately,
so
so
nice.
I would recommend people subscribing there.
Now I want to give you a peck on the cheek.
That's one free month for Jason Miller. No. Thanks, man. But do check out, go to find what's your
I
your
got a
Twitter
link
handle?
tree. You can throw stuff there.
Cool.
Great. As for us, remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review. Helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, write a memoir. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcasty For Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Steven Soderbergh podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. All of that is at podcastyforme.com and shootingyourselfinthehead.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. We'll be back in 2 weeks with The Underneath. I almost said Kafka. What if we just put it back up? Hey, that's something that might happen to friggin' both Kafka
Joseph
and
Kafka.
Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron Kurlander, also a kind of guy whose like favorite podcast would just not have an episode out.
It's true. Yeah.
Pitiful. But if you can't wait that long, sign up for the Patreon. We'll have another episode out in just 1 week from today. And with that,
Bye.
bye.